Creation doesn't come from exerting effort on the physical world, trying to bend matter into shape from willpower alone. Creation arises from something else entirely. It is the animation of our internal world. Earlier in my journey, I saw education as constraining, as something that narrowed your perception and boxed you in, told you what was possible and what was not, and disregarded the multidimensional nature of our being. I no longer view it that way. Now I see education as that which stretches the boundaries of our perception, whether it occurs within a system that is open or closed. Because even in a closed system, something interesting happens. You see, a closed system might limit authentic expression, while an open one may encourage it. But even someone that is imprisoned and literally in shackles will still create. They will write, they'll imagine, they'll compose, and they'll create meaning. And that alone tells us something very important. Creation certainly does not arise from freedom of circumstance, and it also does not arise from force. Creation doesn't come from exerting effort on the physical world, trying to bend matter into shape from willpower alone. Creation arises from something else entirely. It is the animation of our internal world. And that animation occurs regardless of your life circumstance, regardless of what you call your life situation. It happens because there is tension. By tension, I don't mean resistance. I don't mean struggle. I don't mean stress. And I don't mean force. I mean voltage. Now, what is voltage? And I want to slow that down for a second, as tension in today's world often has a bad rep. In school, we were taught to construct circuits, and anyone who has ever built a circuit understand that a bulb only lights up once electricity flows. If the wires are too thin, resistance slows the current. Voltage, however, is not resistance. It is a capacity to sustain the flow of charge between 2 points long enough for the light to emerge. Voltage, in this context, refers to your ability to sustain the flow of your creation long enough for it to crystallize in physical form. So when I use the word tension, this is what I mean. It is a potential difference between 2 points, the space between what you feel inside and what has not yet taken form. That gap is the creative field. And in this context, voltage refers to your ability to sustain the flow of your own current long enough for it to crystallize in physical form. Not by forcing to manifest, not by chasing results or obsessing over it, but by sustaining it with your internal current, which is why I always create and then let it go. Now that current is amplified through alignment with what I call your true north, as when your internal coherence is strong enough to sustain its own current, expression becomes inevitable. The physical form doesn't appear because you push harder, but because flow was maintained. It is this tension between consciousness and existence, between inner potential and outer form, that gives consciousness a way to experience itself. Without that tension, nothing moves. A lack of movement creates stagnation. In other words, no expression, no expansion. Structurally, this gap is represented as a pause between our inner and outer world, as if our inner and outer reality were already identical. There would be no experience of physical reality at all. Creation, therefore, within the context that we live in, is consciousness meeting itself through form. And this brings us to another important distinction. Not all tension is resistance. Resistance feels like pushing against a tide, whereas tension feels like direction. It feels like stretch. It feels like pull. Without that voltage difference, there is no current. Voltage, therefore, is the capacity for movement, which is represented as the gap between impulse and form. That gap is tension, not resistance. Resistance blocks energy. Tension is that which directs it. And when you see that, you stop trying to force things into being. You stop asking. The question becomes, not why isn't this working, but can I sustain the current of what I've created? As when the voltage is there, the light turns on.